Well, hello there and welcome. You are listening to the Kindness Matters podcast, and I am your host, Mike Rathbun. What is this podcast all about? It's about kindness. It's a pushback against everything negative that we see in the news and on social media today, and it's a way to highlight people, organizations that are simply striving to make their little corner of the world a little better place. If you want to join in on the conversation, feel free. Go ahead and follow us on all of your social media feeds. We're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. We're even on LinkedIn under Mike Rathbun. Check us out. And in the meantime, so sit back, relax, enjoy, and we'll get into the Kindness Matters podcast. Hey, welcome to the show, everybody. It's so nice of you to join us. I really appreciate you taking the time to spend a half hour or so with me and my guest. And as always, if there's something that you hear in this episode that inspires you or moves you or motivates you, please make sure to share that with friends, families, colleagues at work, or even just, complete strangers. I would appreciate it, and hopefully they will appreciate it as well. So my guest today is Adam Dahl. I found him on TikTok, okay, and there were a few things that caught my attention. First of all, during football season, he always wore Minnesota Vikings gear, so that was a plus, obviously, being from Minnesota. Second of all, and this is in no particular order, Adam is an experienced and creative fudge maker. And I mean, when I was growing up, fudge was basically reserved for Christmas time, right? So to see somebody making fudge all the time, that was awesome. But then the other thing was that Adam uses his TikTok profile, his TikTok account, to raise money to help pay off school lunches in his area. And did I also mention he makes fudge? So amazing to have you here. Welcome to the show, Adam Dahl. Hi.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Mike. I appreciate it. First of all, yeah, born and raised a Scoldger here. I've taught my kids to do the Skull chant as well. So
Skull.
we'll always be repping. Yep.
Nice. I see Sam Darnold's on his way to the Seahawks. And for God's sake, don't bring in Aaron Rodgers.
No, please. I might have to silently boycott a season. I'll still watch the game. I would boycott the season.
Who are we kidding? We'll still watch.
I can't do that.
Except if he was here, that'd be like watching a car accident. You don't want to look, but you can't look away, right?
No, Brett Favre was one thing. Aaron Rodgers, I can't do.
Yeah. Nope. That's a line too far, but that's beside the point. So yeah, I mean, okay. So I watch you making fudge, and you do a lot of it on the screen, right? You do a lot. I mean, you show like almost every step.
Yeah, I do my best to hide my recipe as much as I can, but I think fudge is just a fascinating thing to a lot of people anyway. It's a very American treat. I have plenty of people that come into my shop all the time that are from other countries that are just kind of like, what is this? And how do you describe it to somebody that doesn't know? Because it's not a caramel. It's not fully a chocolate. It's not a brownie. It's not a cake. It's fudge. So the process is in and of itself, it's fascinating to a lot of people. So it's a lot of fun for me to showcase that.
Yeah, I had no idea that people from other countries didn't know what fudge was.
I have just kind of learned over the process of having this business for the last few years of kind of how fudge got started. And most of it, I think, is kind of urban legend. I don't think anybody really knows. There's really no set actual fudge recipe. And people can debate that all they want. You know, my grandma's got the best recipe. My aunt had this recipe, and this is what it truly is. But it's really, there are literally like 10 different kinds of, like, there's different ways to make fudge, different ingredients. Some people use marshmallow. Some people do corn syrup. Some people do frosting and powdered sugar that they microwave at home. And that's
Oh,
not, I
wow.
wouldn't recommend that one. But there are lots of ways to do it. And so mine is just my own recipe that I've created over the last like 10 or so years. And it's fun to show it off, like I said.
Yeah, if I ever make it, I usually do that no bake refrigerator fudge.
Mhm.
It's not the same thing, but it's still it's good. How did you realize your love for fudge?
Um, like you, it was always something that we had at Christmas time. I don't want to say it was like a super constant or that my mom had the best recipe. I think my mom would make it occasionally. And I was a wrestler in middle school and high school. So wintertime
Okay,
was wrestling season. I'm on a diet anyway, but it was always something that like at a holiday, I could be like, okay, cool. I can break my diet a little bit, have a piece of fudge. And who am I kidding? I would have 4 or 5. But um,
exactly.
and so where I live in Lexington, Kentucky, it's a college town. And a lot of our friends are transplants, from, like we are. We're not from Lexington. So we host Friendsgiving every year with all of our friends before everybody heads home for the holidays. So it was always kind of an extra dessert to put out. You know, we do the turkey and ham and, sweet potato casserole, and my wife would make an apple pie, and then I would just make fudge. And I noticed that it became something that our friends would look forward to and talk about how great it was at Friendsgiving. And so I just kind of started making it. I would get excited around Halloween time to be like, okay, what can I do this year? What can I break off and like what flavor can I try? And so that's really kind of how it got started and how I realized that I've got something here. If enough of my friends are at least encouraging me to make it and give something else a shot, like that was enough for me to be like, okay, maybe this is good.
For sure. So you like went into full planning mode months in advance, and that's so. I think that's when you know that you're like destined to. If you put that much effort into it and that much time into it, that's when you know you probably should have a business, right?
Yeah, and I think like it. I'm a cook more than anything else. I'm not necessarily a baker, but I would find myself really getting excited about making it and how it kind of emerged from me just messing around in my kitchen to actually selling it was there was a year where I found myself trying to make a bunch of different flavors, and I would just bring them in to the teachers at our daughter's daycare, and it's like, "Hey, try this out, give it a shot." And of course, they were raving about it, which was awesome and like a boost to my ego a little bit. But my wife in the
Sure.
background was kind of like, "Stop spending all this money on ingredients, just like to just give it all away. Why don't you try to sell it?" And so I just started an Instagram page where people could. I had just like a Google form where they could order. It was kind of a cottage kitchen situation, which here in Kentucky, if you can make things out of your house, you got to follow the cottage laws. But that's really how it started,
Yeah.
and then just kind of grew from there.
Yeah. Wow. And 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 I'm interested in this whole thing this because a lot of small businesses they start off selling through social media, but okay, which came first, your brick and mortar or TikTok?
Uh, Technically, the brick and mortar came before TikTok, but my other social accounts came much earlier than everything else. I was on Instagram and Facebook selling that way for in a year and a half, 2 years before I ever had the brick and mortar.
Okay. And then so you grew this business making and selling fudge
Hmm.
to the point where you could get a brick and mortar store. I mean, that's pretty cool.
It's honestly, it was kind of the perfect storm, perfect set of circumstances for me because I think when people see my shop through the lens of their phone screen and what my social accounts are, me dancing around and this and that, um, I think people have a different idea of what my shop is, and I can assure you that I can almost touch all the walls with my arms. It's 300 square feet. Um, it actually started as a pie shop right next to a restaurant, and I was to the point where I was doing farmers markets and vendor events and selling online, and it was 100% on the side. I was still in sales, And I was picking up my daughter from school one day, and my wife actually sent it to me, but there was a for rent sign in the window. And she was like, "Hey, might be kind of the perfect thing because I don't need a big storefront. I don't need tables. I don't need table service. I don't need a bunch of square footage. It's 300 square feet of me with a electric stove, an electric range like you'd have in your house, a glass case with it, and a 3 compartment sink to clean everything up." So it's
Wow.
always been a grab and go concept, and I think that for me it was, and frankly for my landlords too, like a perfect fit for just to have me in there and um, have the concept fit so well.
Yeah, for sure. And you were right. I watching your videos, whether it's on Instagram or TikTok or wherever, um, it does seem like there's a lot of space in there. And maybe that's because you utilize,
Mhm.
different areas of it, and it gives the impression that it's a huge space.
Yeah, I think most of the time my phone is up against a wall somewhere, so you're seeing it all the way from one side of the shop. But I think when the fire marshal came in to do my inspection, he was just kind of like, your capacity in here is probably like 4 people. If you happen to get 7 or 8, good for you. Like it's not the
Yeah,
end of the world. Like, but that's probably pushing it. So it's a lot smaller than people think.
yeah. That's so cool. Um, so now, so you're making fudge. What kind of process goes into, because you're always trying new flavors and new recipes, right? What kind of process goes into that?
For me, at least when I was starting doing this, I kind of had the same mindset that you did, and a lot of people do that. Fudge is a holiday treat. Okay. So that's, November and
It's
December.
brown.
Right. And so for me, I was kind of like, okay, if I'm going to make this a full time thing, or if at the time it was, okay, I'm going to be selling at the farmer's market in 90-degree heat, nobody's thinking about getting a melty piece of chocolate fudge at that time. So how do I get it to where it's July and people want a piece of my fudge? And that's where it became, okay, I've got to come up with different flavors to match the seasonality for how things are going. So in the summertime, I'm doing things like key lime pie, orange creamsicle, banana pudding.
Oh wow.
And in the wintertime at Christmas, it's still the classics, but it's peppermint bark, maple walnut, Valentine's
Yeah.
Day is salted caramel chocolate. Like it's got to match the seasonality to try to
Sure.
create demand at a time that it's not normally demanding. Um, but I will say one of my secrets is I've found when I'm baking this stuff, if you use extracts for flavoring, because the sugar is boiling and extracts are alcohol based. So when you put those into boiling sugar, it reacts violently and you boil out a lot of the flavor. Alternatively, there's something called baking emulsions, which are water based. So you put those into boiling sugar, the water boils out, but the flavor stays behind. And that's really kind of my secret weapon. It's just
Ah,
you and me talking. There's,
sure. Yeah.
yeah, divulge any secrets here.
This will be listened to by dozens of people. Um, so okay, that's so cool. Now you have a really good reputation there in Lexington, um, and you have a lot of community with a lot of the other businesses. I know you did. What would we call it? A collaboration
hmm
with a couple of businesses there when it comes to your fudge flavors. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's something that the local business community in Lexington is awesome. It's something that I'm sure exists everywhere else, but just how we all uplift each other. We're checking in constantly. You can connect with just random people that you wouldn't normally connect with from different backgrounds that just have all these amazing shops here in Lexington. And so it became actually the first one was they reached out to me. Is a bakery here in Lexington called Futile Bakery. They have the best cinnamon rolls. Um, and we've kind of gone back and forth. Like I've gotten some of their stuff. They came in. They got an advent calendar a couple years ago, which is something that I do at the holidays. It's a fudge
That's
advent
cool.
calendar. It's fantastic. But they got one, and they were like, "Hey, would you ever would you ever be interested in doing a collaboration where something with our cinnamon rolls?" And I said, "Send them over. I'll get in the lab. We'll figure this out. And that was really honestly my first kind of quote unquote viral moment, if you will. It's the
Oh,
first video on TikTok that I had that went over 200,000 views, which I never had before. I was doing, a couple hundred here and there.
yeah.
Um, was just putting the cinnamon rolls into my fudge and figuring out how that worked. And it is unbelievable. The cinnamon rolls do the heavy lifting there, but that sparked
Wow.
a bunch of other people reaching out. I had a pit master at one of the breweries here that was kind of like, "Hey, how can we collab?" And I was like, "How are we going to put, pulled pork into
Pulled
fudge?"
pork.
We did a maple bacon. He smoked a pork belly that was fantastic. It was unbelievable. And I've done everything from that to I've done a Kentucky bourbon caramel popcorn. There's some stuff possibly with like cocktails and bourbon that we're going to be doing coming
Oh
up.
my God.
So it's cool. Like the social aspect of it is a little bit of an outreach for other small businesses to want to partner up and see what kind of fun stuff we can do.
Yeah. The creativity that goes into that on your end is just mind boggling. Um, like, like, okay, now how do I get pulled pork into a step into the lab? I like that.
Yeah, that would the pulled pork. I'm glad that he was like, you know what, I'll smoke a pork belly and we could do something with bacon. Because if we were having to
Yeah.
do pulled pork, I don't know, that would have really, I would have been pulling out all the stops to figure that one out.
I have crumbled bacon into a chocolate chip cookie recipe. That was awesome.
That's the way to go. The saltiness always.
Yes, salty sweet. Can't can't deny the awesomeness of that. So okay, now something that you talk pretty openly about your relationship with your dad,
Hmm?
um, and he's kind of an inspiring figure as far as because he went through a rough patch there,
Hmm?
but then he turned himself around, and and I love you said something that he always said was spread the message, not the mess.
Hmm?
I love that story. Can you tell that story for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So my dad passed in 2020. So a lot of, kind of what I've done the last few years has been kind of inspired, but also, kind of an homage to him a little
I was
bit
going to
of
say a
just trying
tribute.
to, yeah, yeah, absolutely. But when I was a kid, he was not in our lives. He was an alcoholic, but he was thank God sober for almost 30 years. Um, and a lot of we did kind of grow up a little bit in the AA community just because when we would come visit him, we might hit an AA meeting on a Friday night before we go to his house for the weekend. Or when I would live with him for a couple of years, he was always hitting a meeting, or anytime I'd call him, he'd be at the 4:30 holding court. But a lot of that culture is kind of some of these sayings and motivation, and I never fully got the grasp if the spread the message, not the mess was an AA thing, or if that was him. His ability to turn a phrase, his intuition, his wit, and his sense of humor were always something that really could rally a crowd around him.
Yeah,
But that's something he would say a lot to the newcomers that would come to his centers is, we're here to spread the message, not the mess. Everybody's got mess. And the world has enough mess. We don't need any more mess. Let's focus on spreading the message, whatever that is. And to me, as I've grown this business, that's kind of become a mission statement for me of just how can I take what I've got, spread goodness, whatever that is. For some people, it's simply the fudge. For others, it's the message of a smile when you come into my shop. It's kindness in the community. It's being a safe place to come if you need a safe place. That to me is something that's so important in what I'm trying to do with this business is be more than just fudge. Because, fudge, you can get a lot of different fudge everywhere. I want to be the best fudge, but
sure.
ultimately I want to be known for more than just the chocolate.
Sure, sure. Um, and to that end, um, you have taken the power of TikTok, shall we
Mm-hmm.
say, and you've utilized that to spread some good message in your community. When did you decide to start using TikTok, the Creator Fund, um, to start paying off lunch debt?
So this came about really about 8 weeks ago. It's been quite a
Oh wow!
whirlwind of a few weeks for me. Yeah, it's super recent. But I, probably at the beginning of January, maybe I had like 1,500 followers. Full transparency, I kind of made a post that said, "Hey, there's a lot going on in the world right now. This is what I believe. This is what my business is about." And that got me to a point where enough people supported me to put me over 10,000 followers. And at that point, TikTok is saying, "Hey, you can monetize this if you want." I saw a couple other creators doing it. There's a guy in North Carolina. His TikTok account is Lomax the Lorax. He got to the same point where he was like, "Hey, I'm gonna take all this money and I'm going to donate it to student lunch debt in my community." And he got inspired from another account. She's a teacher in Utah. Her account is Mrs. Cactus Vibes. She kind of does similar things where she's kind of dancing around to some music for a minute. And, they've got an almost $3 million debt in Utah for lunches. So,
Oh my gosh!
um, and I immediately connected with that as I've got two, elementary age kids. And I
Yeah,
was like, the thought of their friends not being able to afford lunch like just devastates me. And again, I'm less than a block from their school. So that's kind of how it started. Um, and then once I kind of did some digging and realized how big the debt is for us here, it was kind of like, okay, it's my mission now. It was $36,000 as of February 7th, just for 9 schools in our district. Everybody else is Title One. So um, it's my mission now before the end of the school year to get that paid off.
yeah, because you were doing a whole series there, and you were kind of like leading up to the reveal of how much is owed out there. And I remember watching that video, and I was just like deflated. I'm like, oh my
Mhm.
god, it's that much still.
And it's crazy. I don't think feeding children is a polarizing topic at all. Much like everything else, the nuts and bolts of some of those things are political. But at the end of the day, it's like, you know what, whatever that takes to make sure that the families are taken care of that need to be taken care of, I'll do
Yeah,
it. If I got to do it, and then TikTok's going to give me some extra money. And it's ballooned beyond just the TikTok. People are coming into my shop making cash donations. People are Venmoing me online, and now it's kind of snowballed a little bit into, okay, we're setting up a nonprofit fund to get this taken care of. You're going to be able to sponsor us for 5Ks coming up throughout the year. So, like I said, it's really become my mission to pay this off and make sure that our community doesn't have this debt at all.
yeah. It just that, and I think some people. I mean, I did a post the other day about what did your lunchbox look like when you were in grade school, and I don't know why I remember this. Right? I'm like, I can barely remember what I had for dinner 2 nights ago, but I remember vividly. There was a TV show in the '60s called The Rat Patrol,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a Rat Patrol lunchbox.
Right.
And I looked online. It was like, those are selling for like hundreds of dollars. I'm like,
If only you'd have
that's
had the
crazy.
foresight to save it. Yeah.
But yeah, I know, right? I think I don't even think it was a year old before I had one of the old thermoses, and it had the
Mm-hmm.
glass inside, and I think I dropped the lunchbox and the thermos broke, and that was the end of that. But yeah, and a lot of people said, well, I had a paper bag, or I don't, and I can't. I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around the richest country in the history of the world, and kids can't afford to eat lunch, and there's something wrong with that fundamentally and
Mm-hmm.
morally and on several other levels. But But this is amazing what you're doing, and I realize it's not just you,
Hmm.
but you're the person that I found, and I don't know if it's the algorithm, but now every time I open up TikTok, I'm seeing are ladies, school teachers dancing, and
Hmm.
for nice twerk, by the way. Um,
And if you
and
could
you
come,
guys are gonna have to go to his page and watch it. I'm not gonna go into any more detail than that. But so you're kind of supporting a specific 5K coming up here, aren't you?
I am. So part of this has been where now people are starting to reach out and say, hey, we've got this going on, or I'm learning a lot of information about kind of how a lot of this process works. But I live in Fayette County, so the FCPS, I think it's Association for Nutrition, is what their official title is. It's the Lunch Ladies, but they sent me information on a 5K that they do in May. It's called the Lunch Lady Hustle 5K, um, and that raises money for scholarships for employees and for students. So they've invited me to participate as kind of a vendor. So we're going to set up a booth there, give away some fudge samples and some stickers and stuff. But I also like doing 5K. So I signed up for the race and I thought,
Cool.
you know what, this is probably a great opportunity to fundraise beyond just the TikTok money,
Yeah.
beyond just, people coming in and giving me cash. So what I'm going to do, and I'm still working out the details on this, but I've created the Doll Who's Fudge team on this race. You can sign up virtually as well. You don't have to be here in Lexington. You can sign up virtually. If you join my team, you get a discount on your registration. Um, and if you sign up for my team, or if you make a donation online, you will get a Feed the Kids T-shirt. And what I wanted out of this, in addition to the donations, was really just to form a community here of this Feed the Kids kind of army. I want the whole race to be filled with T-shirts of Feed the Kids. I want Lexington and all across the country to be filled with T-shirts of Feed the Kids, and really show kind of the strength in the community of this is what we can do when we're together and we put our minds towards something, and we can again set aside a lot of the mess of this world and really just push out a message of
Spread the message.
unity, kindness, like community, and really taking care of those in the community that need it the most.
Yeah, for sure. And so now we'll have, and I just realized that this whole conversation, I haven't mentioned the name of your fudge shop once. It's Doll Who's Fudge.
Yes, sir.
Oh, for Pete's sake. We will have a link to your website in the show notes. And I'll have Instagram and TikTok links as well. Um, so and if somebody's listening and they go, hey, I want to support that, they could do that through your website, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I ship all over the country directly from my shop. So you can order online. That's kind of how I started, was shipping out online and doing these in person events. So had the website for a long time. It was never meant to be as large a portion of my business as it's become over these last 2 months. But it is a big part of the business now, and we really are shipping fudge all over the country. And some people are saying it's the best fudge they've ever had. So I'm not going to argue with them.
You're too humble.
I'm also happy to be second or third. If your mom or grandma's got a better recipe, that's totally fine with me.
Don't mess with Mima's fudge.
Yeah, I would never dream of that.
But yeah, and it just goes back to the creativity, and you're putting out so much great stuff into the world, Adam, and I really appreciate it. I appreciate you. I appreciate your fudge. I appreciate your message, and thank you so much for taking a few minutes to come on and talk to me about this. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I really appreciate you having me on. Thank you so much. This has been super fun.
Well, this episode is going to come out March 27th, so hopefully there'll be time to maybe get some more donations. You said that the 5K was in May?
The 5K is in May. It is May 10th, so it's Mother's Day weekend. But by the time this episode comes out, I will have probably a lot more information on my social accounts. I've got meetings set up in the next week or so to get the nonprofit fund finalized. I should have T-shirts in hand by the time this episode comes out. So there will be a lot of moving parts in the next few weeks. So definitely go check out the socials, figure out if this is something that you want to support us in doing. You can absolutely do that in a variety of ways, and there will be plenty of information on how to do that.
Fantastic. I have to say, before we wrap this up, I also love your shop and the shirts that you wear. I love the fudge around and find out. I love the, is it hashtag feed the kids?
Yeah, hashtag feed the kids is just something that I've put on the on all the socials that I've done. It's kind of a way for that community to just kind of build. I also do fudge all the time. I've got some shirts that say "Get rich or die fudging." It's all just it's fudge. It's supposed to be fun.
It is.
My personality is a big smile, goofing off. I had plenty of teachers, I'm sure, growing up called me the class clown or didn't pay enough attention or was trying to make people laugh too often and not doing what he's supposed to be doing. So now here I am still continuing to do that. It's all tongue in cheek and in good fun.
And you're making a living and making a difference in the world doing it. So fantastic. Thanks so much, Adam. I appreciate your time and I appreciate what you're doing. Keep doing it. And yeah, we'll be in touch.
I really appreciate you, Mike. I hope you have a great rest of your day, great rest of your week.
You too. Bye-bye. I really want to thank you for taking this time to listen to this episode with my guest, Adam Dahl from Dahlhouse Fudge in Lexington, Kentucky. I hope you were able to take something positive from the time you spent with us here. Maybe you'll be inspired. Maybe you'll be motivated. Maybe you'll be moved. If you experienced any of those positive feelings, please consider sharing this podcast with your friends, family, work colleagues, complete strangers, whoever. I'm always striving to offer you a better podcast, so give me some feedback. Let me know how you think I'm doing. Email me, leave me a message on my socials. It would mean the world. Also, feel free to follow us on our socials, like Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and TikTok. This podcast is part of the Mayday Media Network. If you have an idea for a podcast and need some production assistance, or have a podcast and are looking for a supportive network to join, check out MaydayMediaNetwork.com and check out the many different shows like Afrocentric, Spoil My Movie, Generation Mixtape, In a Pickle Radio Show, Wake Up and Dream with D. Anthony Palin, Stacks of Packs, and the Time Pals. We'll be back again next week with a new episode, and we would be honored if you would join us. You've been listening to the Kindness Matters podcast. I'm your host, Mike Rathbun. Have a fantastic week.